What is what is going on? Broncos country, what's popping, people? How you guys doing today, man? I hope you guys are doing good. I want to give a really special shout out to David Talks Broncos. I was thinking about this the other day because I was listening to the fan on the way to work, and they were talking about the Broncos Mount Rushmore. And I was like, man, maybe I should make a video of my top five favorite Broncos. And I was like, I don't really know how much people care about my opinion. And then I watched David Talks Broncos. He just put out a video a couple hours ago talking about his story and his experience, and I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna do the same, and hopefully we can start a trend. So shout out to you, David, man. Thank you for inspiring me for this video because I think it's always important. It's always important to have the stories, right? To talk about why did I start a YouTube channel? Why do I love the Broncos? What why all this? And I think that the stories and the why is always very important. So give you guys a little bit of a background. I grew up to immigrant parents, but both my parents came from Lebanon when they were pretty young. So it's not like I grew up in this Broncos family, right? And Broncos is all that we knew. In fact, my parents didn't really care too much about football. I just kind of started loving it on my own. So it's something that kind of came innate. It was pretty natural to me, and I'll never forget it. Um, it was the loss versus the Jacksonville Jaguars in 1996 when we were really favored to be the champions that year. I literally cried. I was in tears. I was like about 5 years old, just crying. I was so upset about it, and my parents were so weirded out. They're like, it's just a game. What are you worried about? And I think that fueled me to really love this more. I just, for some reason, had this innate trait, and then I really fell in love with them. Obviously, after we won 32 and 33, that helped. But one specific play that always stands out to me that I remember, like, I'm hooked. It's kind of like in golf, right? When you can have a bunch of shitty shots, and then you have that one shot, and you're like, I'm dedicating my life to this sport. This was my dedicating my life to the Broncos moment. Is in Super Bowl 32. I think they threw a screen pass or some sort of a out route to Howard Griffith, the fullback, and he takes it upfield, and Ed McCaffrey just decleats this linebacker, man. And and afterwards, the camera zooms up on him. He's sitting there pointing at him in the face. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. I get goosebumps every time I watch it. And it was that moment that I got so fired up. 6 years old, just absolutely losing my mind. And obviously, we ended up winning that game, Super Bowl 32. But that was really the moment where I was like, "This is it. Like, I'm hooked forever." And so ever since then, man, it's just been all blue and orange for me. I do love the Nuggets for sure. I do love the Avalanche. The Avalanche are probably my second love. I really love that Sakic and that Drury team, but the Broncos will have and always will be uh, my go-to team. So shout out to you, David Talks Broncos. I know you were saying the same thing, my man David. So um, that's kind of my story, man. Just been hooked. I started this channel. Uh, I was 30. I'm 32 years old, and I started this channel when I was 32 years old, and I never really thought to myself that I was going to talk to myself in front of a screen. But I figured one day, you know what? Screw it. Why not? Why not just put some things out there, see how it goes. Make a community out of it. Because I loved a lot of the content that was on YouTube, but I felt like there was a lot of things that were missing. Some things kind of seemed like they were pushing a narrative. Some things felt like it was just too much about editing and not enough about the content or opinions or really driving conversation. So that's really why I wanted to start this. So when I look at the top five Broncos, and David got me thinking about this a lot, it was hard because I always view, just like I do with who's the greatest of all time in any sport, I always view everything in eras, right, in sections. Because for me, there was me as a Bronco fan pre 2000, or really pre Super Bowl 33, and post 2000. Because after that, I really started to become a lot more cognitively involved in the game. I started understanding it a lot more. I started to really pay a lot more attention to little details rather than just kind of the holistic view of it. So I'm really breaking it down to my top five Broncos pre 2000 and post 2000, and then we'll have some honorable mentions for those guys that might not really be considered to be Broncos but played for the team or really just didn't have a long career with us or have an impact that I love. All right, so we'll start with the pre 2000, the early year Broncos, and my number five is Al Wilson. I will always love this guy. I was heartbroken when his neck injury ended up ending his career. And a really big play, something that resonates to me more than anything when I think about Al Wilson. It was a Monday night game against the Raiders. I think it might have been the first time we ever wore orange jerseys. It was a snowy game. The Raiders is fourth down in inches. They hand the ball off to Tyrone Wheatley. He's going for a halfback dive over the pile, and Al Wilson is just standing there like a brick. Meets him in the middle of the air and sends his ass backwards. And again, guys, I ain't lying to y'all. You can't see it on here. Goosebumps. One of my favorite plays. I love everything about the guy. Just he was the Denver Broncos for me for a long time. So shout out to Al Wilson, man. That is one of my goats, and that play will always stick out to me, man. I love that dude. And his pick six was cool too because that wasn't something that you would see really often. So that was awesome. Number four is my man Eddie Mack, Eddie McCaffrey. Obviously, I told you guys his play, what he was involved in, what he did was one of the reasons. That was the biggest reason, and kind of what got me hooked to becoming a Bronco fan. Love Ed McCaffrey. And I loved his toughness. The dude was as tough as nails. He would catch everything. He was just an absolute baller. I mean, the guy on Monday Night Football against the Giants, 2002, maybe 2001, catches his ball across the middle, breaks his leg, holds on to the ball. And that was ultimately the last that we would see of Eddie Mack as a Bronco, and really ever. And for him to go out that way, to break his leg while holding on to the ball, making the catch still, that is the best way for somebody like him to go out because that epitomizes who the hell Ed McCaffrey was. And I love that dude. And shout out to you, Eddie Mack. Number three is my guy, Shannon Sharp, Shay Shay. Man, I loved him when I was a kid. I cried genuine tears when he left to the Ravens, and I celebrated with tears of joy when he came back to the Broncos. I love the dude. I just loved his swag, his aura. He would talk shit, calling the Patriots, we're killing the Patriots, talking the booth. I just love what he brought. I loved everything about his personality. And he really got me to love football from a personal standpoint. Like not just liking these dudes as athletes, but loving them as the people that they were. And I love the dude, and I still follow his podcast. I had the pleasure of actually meeting him a couple weeks ago he was here at Davidson's Liquors, which is my wife's family's liquor store. Shout out to Davidson's. And he was there signing autographs, a couple pictures with him, and it was awesome. It was awesome. The dude looks like he can still play. So shout out to you, Mr. Sharp. Appreciate you, man, for sure. Shannon Sharp would be my number three. Number two in the pre-2000 era is John Elway. A lot of people are going to say how he's not your number one. Well, you'll see who my number one is. But John Elway is the Broncos. He is Mr. Denver. His steakhouse is great. He was great as an executive, at least for the first part. Um, Unbelievable competitor, somebody that is, among the best quarterbacks of all time, if not the best, certainly the most talented quarterback to ever have walked this planet. The dude was amazing. He was with us for the entirety of his career. I mean, he's the Broncos. Build him a million different statues. He is the GOAT, absolutely without a doubt. And obviously with him, a big, you know, the biggest play that I remember is that it was the helicopter. First and foremost, more than anything, was huge. But there was a lot of other plays. Shout out to John Elway, man. That's going to be easy one. And the number one, forever my favorite, and this is any era. He's my favorite player ever, and that's Terrell Davis. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, but I mean, I just love the dude. I love his story. Um, Unbelievable player, unbelievable running back. It still breaks my heart that his career was cut short, but the fact that like he was gonna get cut, he was gonna quit football, it's crazy. And then he ends up having an unbelievable tackle on special teams in a game in Japan in the preseason, catches the attention of Mike Shanahan, and boom. Then he runs for 2,000 yards. He was the best postseason running back in the history. Love the guy. And the real reason why he's my favorite is I would never forget it, man. We were selling our house. I think it was 96 or 97. We were selling it. And my mom was like, hey, you got to come upstairs and greet the people that are going to come look at the house. And I was like, why? What the hell they care about a 6-year-old? She's like, you got to come. I was like, no. I kept giving her pushback. She's like, you got to come upstairs. I was like, yes, mama. Came upstairs. They opened the door, and it's Terrell Davis there with his mom, with his family, looking at the house. They actually ultimately ended up purchasing the house, but I almost collapsed. I fell to my knees. I started bringing out my jerseys and I had a little football, but it was a Vikings football because they didn't have Broncos ones here at the time. He signed it. Super gracious guy, and he really made a kid's dreams come true. It was awesome. It was awesome. So something that'll always resonate to me. So TD, You're always my favorite. It's the reason that I always mile high salute at the end of every single one of my videos. I love that man. Shout out to TD. All right, let's get to it, guys, with the post 2000 Broncos. All right. And number 5, this one always makes my heart melt, man. Shout out, rest in peace, Demarius Thomas, the late, the great DT. I loved him because when we first drafted him, it was controversial. I kind of wanted Des Bryant. We ended up going with Demarius. He kind of gets hurt at the beginning part of his years, deals with some injuries, deals with some drops. But man, oh man, did that guy turn into an absolute stud. Just unbelievable. I never seen a physical specimen at the wide receiver position quite like him. But just a gracious person, good dude, unbelievable player. Gave one of the best memories in Broncos history too, with that overtime catch against the Steelers with Tebow on that playoff game. Just amazing, just amazing. So shout out to you, DT man. Number 4 is Chris Harris Jr. I love this dude. I loved everything about the way the guy plays. He played with that undrafted free agent chip on his shoulder his entire career. Absolute stud. A straight killer. Somebody, a dog. He's the definition of a dog. He was undersized, but he wasn't turning down to nobody. He was locking people down. He was always making a play at the big moments. And he's just a cool dude, man. I freaking love Chris Harris Jr. and that's why he's number 4. Number 3, you can see it up there, guys. The jersey. It is Mr. Champ Bailey himself. Heartbroken that we didn't end up, getting him a ring. Obviously, when we first traded for Champ, I wasn't really a fan of it. I loved Clinton Portis. I was all about the running back position. When you're young, you like the skill set, the skill position players the most. But Champ Bailey was amazing. He was a class act. He was always just making plays you wouldn't see, corners make at that time. Absolute lockdown in every way, shape, or form. He was phenomenal, and really wish in '05 that that team was good enough to win the Super Bowl, but we didn't get it done. But I still hate that. So shout out to you, champ. Number 2 is the legend himself, Mr. Von Miller. How can you not love Von Miller? I mean, come on now. The guy was unbelievable, relentless, behemoth, Super Bowl MVP, just out of this world, otherworldly crazy. And he's somebody too, man. He had his moments. Broncos country wasn't always behind him. He had his off the field issues. He had his injuries. But man, oh man, did that guy show up when it meant the most. And I'll forever love Von Miller. I follow him in his career. I'm always rooting for him. So shout out to you, Von Don. Love you, brother. And then, of course, number 1. And this is arguably my favorite player of all time. And that's Peyton Manning. I loved Peyton Manning when he was a Colt. I loved him even more when he was here. In my opinion, he's still the greatest quarterback of all time. Maybe the second, but he's unbelievable. Everything about him, the way he battled back from that neck injury to come in with the Broncos too, and then obviously I'll always view him as a Bronco lifetime because even though he only played here for 4 years, he still lives here. He still always supports the team. He's still always shouting out the team. He's always referring to the Broncos as us. He does so much for the community. How can you not like the sheriff, man? Out here breaking records, league MVP, two Super Bowls we went to, one Super Bowl championship, breaking records, most yards in a season, most touchdowns in a season. The guy, he did it all. He did it all. Love everything about that man. So shout out to you, Peyton Manning. And then we'll go to the honorable mentions, guys, because there's a lot of guys that I love that obviously you wouldn't consider, nobody would really consider to be Broncos after their career was done, but players that I love. Um, number 5 was C.J. Anderson. Obviously, he was somebody you would always consider to be a Bronco. Didn't play here long enough, but I just loved everything about the way he played. Another guy, undrafted, kind of chip on his shoulder, ran hard, caught the ball, did the dirty work. Just always seemed like every time he was you know doubted or trying to be replaced, he wouldn't let it happen. So shout out to CJ, man. I see he's a beast of a bowler. He got a 300, several months back. So shout out to CJ Anderson. Number 4, John Lynch, and these aren't really in any particular order, but John Lynch is one of those guys where obviously I loved him with the Bucks. Love the way he plays, just lighting people up. So it was really cool to have him here for a few years. So shout out to John Lynch. Demarcus Ware is another guy on this list. Somebody that I loved. I hate the Cowboys. I always loved Demarcus Ware. He's amazing. He came here, unbelievable leadership, unbelievable mentorship to Von Miller. Genuinely just a good dude. And I mean, always made the big play. Like one of the most memorable ones for me is a Monday night game, I think, or maybe a Thursday night game. Anyways, we're playing the Niners, and this kind of got overshadowed because it was the game that Peyton Manning ultimately broke the all-time passing yards record at the time. Um, but he had a spin move against Staley, was it the right tackle? One of the best right tackles in the NFL had a spin move and absolutely shook the guy out of his boots and just knocks the quarterback out. So love me some Demarcus, man. Shout out to you, Demarcus Ware. Number two is my guy, dude. My guy Aqib Talib. Love Aqib, man. One of those guys that you would hate to play against, but you love to have him on your team, fighting people, ripping Michael Crabtree's necklace off his shirt, just talking that shit all the time. I love the kind of attitude that Aqib Talib brought. Our defense, the best defense in the history of the NFL, the no-fly zone in 2015 would have never been what it was had it not been for Mr. Aqib Talib. Shout out to you. One of the best press conferences too, man. When he's talking about we got the same agent and when I see him in the summer, I'm gonna be his ass. I love that because it was Chief Shot and Chris Harris just had his teammates back. Somebody that how the hell would you not want him as a teammate? Love me some Aqib Talib, man. And then this one is number one. This one is in the rankings. The reason I got this guy's jersey up here, camera's always moving to focus on me, but it's Mr. Brian Dawkins. I loved Brian Dawkins when he was with the Eagles. Everything about him, his coming out of the tunnel celebration, his physicality, knocking people out, loved Brian Dawkins, had the honor to meet him, which is when he signed my jersey in the mall, and just a gracious person too. And that to me always puts somebody into another tier when you get to see the kind of person that they are. So that's my list, guys. I'd love to know what y'all think. Who's your favorite Broncos and why? Honorable mention like Jake Plummer too, man. Jake the Snake was one of my dudes. I love the Snake. I loved a lot of guys that we had on this team. A lot of Broncos, but those are my special top five Broncos, and that's my story. But I'd love to hear you guys' story. Why are you guys Bronco fans, and who are your favorite of all times, and why? So share it. And it doesn't even have to be like the best Broncos, just your favorites. Everybody's got their own personal guys. So let me know in the comments, man. Let's interact. Let's talk about it. My high salute, guys, and as always, peace.